When I think of the hardest things on earth to explain, my mind automatically goes to the fact that I'm still not on the Hallmark Channel, even though I've spent a Herculean amount of time and resources into leveraging my YouTube audience to do so. After that, it probably goes to the mystery of songwriting. So today we're going to talk a little bit about a new song that I'm writing. I'm just going to play it and track it first, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the chord progression, a little bit how I'm playing it, just my thoughts on doing it, and some stuff that I learned throughout the entire process. So Sweetwater sponsored this video along with Sennheiser. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the headphones that I'm using to track and mix this in a second, but let's just get to the song and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Around the ring, another steady trip around the ring, never crossing, only circling, knowing we agreed. I tried to change my speed, but it doesn't really matter. We're in a holding pattern, parallel, the same direction but in parallel. Magnets repelling and it's just as well. Drawn out the steps to skip, I push the pole to flip. All my goals and focus scatter, stuck in a holding pattern. Something tells me it'll be a while. Direction, always chasing a direction, fighting off a course correction. Anytime, anywhere, just look up in the air, and in the meantime we'll imagine life outside a holding pattern. And I don't know if I want this to be like a demo of a song or if I actually want this to be the final thing, but I'm trying to get it to sound as good as possible. I got a pretty cool setup going on here. I've got a microphone right here. I also have an amp that's pointed away from me that is direct out and also mic'd up. And really, I'm using the Sennheiser HD300 Pros to track this, okay? So Sweetwater and Sennheiser sponsored this video. They sent me these headphones and another pair of headphones because I want to talk about the differences between open back and closed back headphones. This was a term I did not know what it actually meant, but these are closed back headphones. So I'm going to be tracking a lot of this with a metronome at first and then maybe kind of going off script. But when you're doing that with a metronome and you don't want stuff to bleed into a microphone that I just hit right there, and this room that I'm in right now is not treated at all, so I'm trying to close mic everything. So I really got things close mic'd and I've got it cranked up. Now, usually if you don't have closed back headphones, you're going to get click bleed into the microphone that you're tracking, and that's going to be ridiculous to mess up, right? So I'm going to track with closed back, and then I'm going to mix with open back, which we're going to talk about in a second. But definitely, these headphones are awesome. Affiliate link in the description. Thank you, Sweetwater, for doing this. All right, so let's get some things out of the way. First of all, people will be like, what are you using the capo for? That's cheating, right? Well, no, because I think it kind of has to do with the chord progression, all right? Capos can be a crutch for a lot of people, but I really see them as a creative thing. So if we just talk about the chord progression real quick. Like right off the bat, I'm playing what I'm thinking of as A major, but capo on 3. So really this is a C major chord, all right? But I'm kind of finger picking it, right? So I'm thinking of it, again, in capo terms, A major with an open B string on top. So you can think of that as like an A add 9, B being the second note in the key of A, right? And that kind of just makes it a little prettier, right? That little, like that. And then we're just gonna go to A major 7, then A dominant 7. So this is all the 1 chord, and then we go to the 4 chord as a major 7. So I'm thinking D major 7, okay? Now, one of the questions I get a lot too is like, well, when you write songs, do you write the chords or the lyrics first? Depends. There's no hard answer for that for me anyway. But this song was actually written chord progression first, and for the first time ever, actually, I wrote the lyrics to the song without even having a guitar in my hand. I just voice memoed the whole verse kind of progression, and then I had it, and I had an idea of what the melody was going to sound like, and I actually wrote it just lyrically. Aside from that, we can talk about the lyrics later if you guys want. Like, let me know. Maybe we can do it in QA or something like that, because that's a complicated, convoluted process. But anyways, so we got the 1 chord with the open B, add 9, major 7, then dominant 7, then the 4 chord is a major 7 chord, and then minor 4 chord. Okay, so we turn that 4 chord from D major 7 to D minor 7, right? Classic move. And then my favorite part of the song, probably, we're gonna go to a B, again, relative to the capo. I know it's really a D7. B7, so this would be the 2 chord in the key as secondary dominant, which goes to the 5 chord in the key. I'm thinking of this as E, right? A, B, C, D, E. 2, 5, 1. That's why it kind of sounds a little jazzy, right? Little tip of the cap to the jazz people out there. 2, 5, 1. And then the ultimate 5 chord augmented trick, which I actually did a YouTube short not too long ago. Again, just take the root note of the 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this case, I'm thinking of an E relative to the key of A, and then staircase it up. So 10, A, 9, D, 8, G, and B. And that kind of gives that augmented vibe back home. Think Beatles, Oh Darling, whatever you want to do, right? So that's the whole thing. Da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum, major 7. Then we're gonna go to dominant 7. Then go to the major 4 chord. We're gonna flip that to a minor. Then we're gonna go major 2 chord to 5, and then end up at 1. Augmented to bring it back home. Or if we're going into like the B part, I guess. Something tells me it'll be a while. So that part right there, it's just we go back to that 4 chord, because everything I do is Lydian based on that 4 chord, major 7, D major 7, 3 chord, minor, C sharp minor in this key, the 6 chord to the 5 chord back to the 4. Right? So 6, 5, 4, descending. When I say those numbers, if you don't know what those numbers mean, join my Patreon, because it's the most important thing that you can learn in music is taking scale degrees, turning them into numbers, and turning those into chords. 6, 5, 4, but then we're going to connect the dots from the major 7 on the 4 chord, and then go a step higher and a half step, just going through the notes in this key, and that buys me time to get back home, right? So that's basically how you play the song. And again, the whole thing was written just off the verse progression, and then when I wrote the lyrics for it, I was like, all right, well, I need one more part. So that's when I just kind of like went numbers. Always 4 chord. 4, 3, 6, 5, 4. And then I just wrote the rest of the song from there, right? Now, I want to talk a little bit about just the mixing of it. Again, super simple. I kept it simple, but that's why I want to talk about those other Sennheiser headphones, because that's how I mixed it with open back headphones, all right? This is something that I really learned just through trial and error. I remember early on, whenever I was like making my own music and I was like trying to make it sound good, I would mix in headphones before I had like a good room. Again, this is not my normal room. If you guys have never seen any of my videos before, I'm on the road right now, so we're doing this quick and dirty here in a not less than ideal space. But at the studio, before I got that room dialed in, I would mix in headphones, just because, you know, you think, oh, there's like less reflections. I'm just getting like a real direct source of what I'm doing. But what I found out back in the day was all my mixes would be super bass heavy, and the high end would be super bright, unlistenably bright, okay? Like the high end it ended up hurting my ears if I listened to it on like a regular playback system, all right? And I always wondered like why that was. I'm like, why do these sound so bad? Well, yeah, a lot of it was my monitoring system, but also because I was mixing a lot in closed back headphones, okay? So that is actually why you would need like a pair of great headphones like these Sennheiser ones, because they actually allow some of the bass to like escape essentially because it's open back. But what that does is because you're not all boxed in and the bass isn't overpowering it, you're getting a more accurate representation of those sounds. So mixing in open back headphones is actually way preferable if you don't have a treated room, because you're getting a more realistic sense of how those highs are going to sound. And again, this is something I learned through so much trial and error. I wish somebody would have told me this earlier, because I didn't know the difference between closed and open back headphones. This is just something that like, you know, is this just spec that I didn't know was that important. But again, closed back, great for tracking stuff. You can get used to a pair of closed back headphones and know what the weaknesses are for mixing them. But tracking is great because you're going to get more of an isolated thing. You're not going to get as much bleed from like a click or other tracks and stuff like that. Open back is great because it's not just like cupping all the bass frequencies into your ears. It's letting it breathe a little bit. Some room is escaping out of it. You're going to get a little bit more click bleed if you're tracking with open back headphones, but not so much as a game breaker. I could definitely track with those and it would be fine. But like it's not like they're speakers, which is another thing that I didn't know until like I actually used a pair. So you can hear what's going on outside of the source, but again, not ideal for tracking, excellent for mixing and just kind of like monitoring stuff where you're not recording, because again, you're getting a more accurate representation. The basses aren't covering some potentially painful high-end stuff that you're not going to have a description of. Because again, when the bass is just really overpowering stuff, you tend to mix it. When you mix it higher, you're not having to boost those highs just to kind of get them in the cans a little bit more. So yeah, that's exactly why you need these headphones. Thank you to Sweetwater and Sennheiser for educating me and sponsoring this video. So check that out in the description below. But let's just talk about the minimal amount of plugins I have on here. Cool? All right, let's get into the magical world of mixing. Last thing I want to say about these headphones, the HD600s, the cable that they give you is generously long. I always have an issue with cables not being long enough. That is not an issue with these. Really great. All right. So as you can see here, I have 3 tracks. This one right here, the top one, is just the vocal, right? This is just the vocal microphone. Another steady trip around the ring. That's it soloed, right? So that was one of the reasons I wanted to close mic it. Again, it was live, so you can still hear a little bit of the guitar playing. Trip around the ring, never crossing. But really, it's not that bad, okay? As far as like getting the extraneous, the guitar thing, considering I was finger picking the guitar like right there. What we have on here, we have an EQ. As you can see, it's just all the low stuff is passed here. This is just the stock Logic EQ. I have boosted some of the lows and the low mids and taken out some of the highs because I have kind of like a naturally nasal voice, so I found that EQ curve generally makes my voice sound a little bit better. After that, I have one of the Logic compressors on there because as you can see, again, since it wasn't just like a totally isolated vocal thing that I had time to work on, you can see that there's all the attack on pretty much every time I'm singing. There's a spike right up at the front. So I have a compressor feeding into another compressor, one of the stock Logic ones going into one of the Arturia tube compressors. And the first one kind of takes down that peak in the middle, makes it more even, and then the other one just kind of compresses that a little bit more. And then also this LX480 reverb that I have on there because, again, if I am just left to my own devices, I'll always put way too much reverb on everything. So this is just a little bit of plate reverb to kind of just make it sound a little fuller, right? So let me X out of these real quick. And after that, this is the mic'd up amp right here, right? And then we're gonna add the DI, right? And I have these panned left and right, even though you're just hearing a mono source right now. Now, again, if you look at it, this is the line out. It doesn't even look like there's a signal, so I really had to compress the heck out of that, right there just to kind of like boost that, because I don't have a output volume control on the line out on that, nor do I have an input control on the line in for interface. So again, clean signal, sounds great when it's boosted, adds maybe like a tiny bit of noise, but for something like this, I don't really care. I have both of those, so I have 2 guitar tracks now going onto a bus, right? So here's the bus thing right here. We really just have the EQ. All it's doing is rolling off the lows. After that, I have this Bus Force Arturia plugin, like a multi-band kind of compressor thing. So it has like an EQ and a compressor built into it, right? That's really just more for like the EQ point. And then I have another compressor just kind of, you know, putting those both together, all right? So now after that, I really end up with kind of what I'm thinking of as just 2 tracks to work with. The guitar track, which again is 2 tracks bust into one, and the vocals. So to get those to mix well together, I just have this little chain right here, okay? So if I just kind of play all of it together. We agreed. I tried to change my speed. Here's everything I got going on, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so the first thing I have on there, the entire mix bus, is like a console EQ, right? This is one of the cool things that comes with Logic, just like a vintage EQ. After that, I have another instance of the Arturia Bus Force on that. And then after that, I have yet another compressor to kind of even out both of them, acting as like a mix bus compressor. Then a little bit of the exact same reverb to kind of add to the guitars, even though there's some reverb going on from the guitar amp. It's just kind of making it sound a little bit more natural by adding the guitars into the same artificial room that I put on the original vocal. And then last but not least, the Fab Filter L2 Pro L2 compressor. In parallel. You can see here it does a really good job but in parallel. Of showing how much headroom I have left and how much I can like boost it and kind of get it to be as loud as possible without adding extra noise to it. So yeah, that's basically the entirety of the mix. Again, it might seem like a lot of plugins. If you don't have these ones, I'm sure your DAW, whatever you're using, has something similar. It's really just EQs, compressors, a reverb, and then a limiter at the end. I like these ones, but hey, if there's ones that you like or just ones that come with it, you can definitely get the same job done with them. Just mess around with them and then start with a preset and then tweak it from there, and eventually you'll find out kind of what works for you. Because one thing that I've seen with a lot of these, YouTube things on plugins and stuff is they'll act like there's hard, fast rules for everything, and that's just bad advice, right? In my experience, you got to learn how to use stuff, and then you got to learn how to use stuff contextually, like anything else. And the more you do it, the more you'll find your sound, and the more you'll find stuff that works for you. So yeah, I'm definitely happy with how the song turned out. Ended up being a sweet little tune. The writing for it, again, it was just kind of taking a metaphor and running with it. I think it's extremely self-explanatory. I'll have the lyrics in the description. I think they ended up kind of fitting together quite nicely. A relatable situation I'm sure we've all been in, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, just kind of keeping it simple. Let me know if maybe I should do this on acoustic instead when I do the final version. Let me know if maybe this should be the final version. But as far as just kind of just tracking a song and getting it down in something that I feel like is my style, I think it turned out really well. So thank you again to Sennheiser, thank you to Sweetwater, and thank you to you people out there for taking the time to watch this. And I'm excited to hear your feedback. So talk to you soon.